My wife, who convinced me to sign over $250, $0 in our family inheritance during our divorce, secretly transferred it all to her ex-boyfriend's account after I trusted her. Now she's claiming I'm the reason she's lost everything. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife turned out to be a lying, cheating manipulator. Honestly, I always thought we had a solid life, 2 kids, a nice house, decent jobs, and a future I believed we were building together. But the truth hit me like a freight train when I uncovered what she'd been hiding behind my back. The craziest part, it all started with a simple conversation about our inheritance, something I trusted her with, something she used to turn around and screw me over with. It was around 6 months ago when things started feeling off. Was acting weird, more irritable, snapping at me over tiny things. She'd cancel plans last minute, say she was busy, or just disappear for hours without explanation. I brushed it off because, honestly, I was busy too, work was hectic, and I figured she was stressed. But then I noticed her phone buzzing at odd hours, and she'd quickly hide it when I entered the room. I got suspicious, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I mean, maybe she was just stressed, maybe she was talking to friends or something. Things escalated when I found a strange receipt in her purse one day, an online transfer confirmation from her bank. It was for $50, $0. I stared at it, confused, thinking maybe it was a mistake or some kind of investment she was doing secretly. But then I remembered that we had discussed our inheritance, the $250, $0 we'd received from my family's estate. We agreed to split it, invest some, save some, and use the rest responsibly. I had no idea she'd be stupid enough to do something so reckless without telling me. That's when I started digging. I pulled up our joint bank account, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Over the following weeks, more transactions popped up, transfers to her personal account, payments to some guy named Jake. I looked into it, and that's when I found out that had secretly transferred over $250, $0 of our inheritance to her ex-boyfriend's account. I couldn't believe it. She convinced me to sign over the money, saying it was for some investment opportunity, and I trusted her because she looked me straight in the eye and said she had everything under control. But that wasn't all. I found out she'd been seeing Jake behind my back for months, probably since before we even signed those papers. I caught her texting him late at night, calling him babe, and sending pictures that left nothing to the imagination. I remember confronting her one night when I saw her sneaking out of the house after I'd gone to bed. She said she was going to her sister, but I followed her and saw her get into Jake's car. That's when everything changed for me. The betrayal was one thing, but the money, that was the worst part. She had convinced me to give her the inheritance, and she just used it to run off with her ex, who's a guy I knew she was cheating on me with for months. And she's got the nerve to sit there and lie, saying I'm the reason she lost everything, that I'm the one who's ruined her life. It's like she's trying to make me the bad guy. In this mess, while she walks away with her new lover and my money, I feel like I've been punched in the gut every day since I found out. The shock, the rage, the heartbreak, it's all still raw. I trusted her more than anyone, and she used that trust to stab me in the back. I don't even know how to process all this. Just a few months ago, I was planning our future, and now I'm here, trying to figure out how someone I loved could betray me so completely. It's like everything I believed in was a lie. And the worst part, she's still denying it, still lying through her teeth, claiming I'm the villain here. I don't know what to do next. Part of me wants to confront her again, scream at her, demand the truth. But another part just wants to walk away, forget this whole nightmare ever happened. I keep telling myself I deserve better, but it's hard to find my footing when I feel so shattered inside. I keep replaying everything in my head, how she looked when she lied, how she convinced me to sign over the money, the way she's been sneaking around. Jake behind my back. It's like I was living in some kind of nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I guess I just needed to get this off my chest. Maybe writing it down will help me make sense of it all. I don't know what's coming next, whether I'll fight to get my money back, try to salvage what's left of our marriage, or just cut ties and move on. But one thing's clear, I've been played, lied to, and betrayed in the worst way possible, and I have to figure out how to pick up the pieces from here. After I uncovered all of this, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My mind kept spinning, trying to make sense of how could do this to me, to us. I remember sitting in the living room, staring at the wall, feeling numb, until I finally decided I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. I had to confront her, had to hear her lie straight to my face, and then decide what the hell I was going to do. The moment I confronted her was a storm. I found her in the kitchen, pretending to be calm, but her eyes were darting around like she was trying to find an escape route. I threw the receipts and bank statements on the table, watching her reaction. She froze for a second, then tried to brush it off, saying, "It's nothing, just some mistake. You're overreacting as usual." That was her go-to: deny, deny, deny. I didn't buy it. I looked her straight in the eyes and asked, "What's going on? Who is Jake, and why did you transfer all that money to him? Don't lie to me. I know everything." Her face twisted into a sneer, and she started spinning some bullshit about how I was paranoid, how I didn't trust her, how I was making all this up because I was insecure. She told me she was trying to fix our marriage, and that I was just jealous of her past with Jake. That was her excuse, trying to make me feel guilty, like I was the problem. But I wasn't buying it anymore. The truth was right in front of me. She'd been lying from the start, and I wasn't going to be fooled again. I pressed her harder, asking why she'd do this, why she'd take our inheritance and run off with her ex. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "It's none of your business. I did what I had to do. You're just jealous because I found someone better." That's when I saw the complete lack of remorse in her face. She was more upset about me catching her than about what she'd done. The whole confrontation left me feeling sick. I'd been a fool for trusting her, for signing over that money, for believing she cared about us. All the signs had been there, but I ignored them. I convinced myself she was stressed, or maybe just having a rough patch. Now I saw her for what she really was: selfish, manipulative, and utterly unfaithful. That night I stayed up till dawn, trying to process everything. I felt angry, betrayed, and also incredibly hurt. How could she be so cold? How could she lie about everything, even about her feelings for Jake? I kept replaying all the moments I missed: her secretive texts, her late-night phone calls, the way she dodged my questions. It was like a betrayal on every level. And the money, her using our inheritance to fund her affair, made it all even worse. I thought I was doing the right thing by trusting her, by giving her control of the money, and she just used it to run away with her ex. I knew I had to act. I started researching my options. I reached out to a lawyer, and I was stunned when I found out I could potentially get some of the money back if I took legal action. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that even if I got the money back, the damage was done. She'd already taken a piece of me that I didn't think could be replaced. My trust was shattered, and I felt like I had to rebuild everything from scratch. In the meantime, I decided I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to spin more lies. I started gathering evidence: screenshots of her texts, bank statements, anything that could prove her deception. I also decided I'd keep a close eye on her phone and bank accounts, just in case she tried to cover her tracks. The thought of her sneaking around behind my back with Jake made me sick, but I knew I had to stay calm and methodical. I couldn't let her see how much she'd hurt me. I also had to face the reality that this might end our marriage. I loved her, still do in some twisted way, but I couldn't stay with someone who lies and betrays me like this. It was tearing me apart inside. Every time I thought about the money she took, the lies she told, and the fact that she slept with Jake while I was trusting her, I felt a mix of rage and despair. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to her true nature. One thing was clear: I wasn't going to let her walk away without consequences. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, to understand that her actions had real, lasting effects. Whether that meant legal action, separation, or just walking away and cutting her out of my life, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when I was drowning in betrayal. Now I'm at a crossroads. Part of me wants to fight to get my money back, to hold her accountable for what she did. Part of me just wants to pack up and leave, start over somewhere else where I don't have to see her face and remember the pain. I'm angry, confused, and exhausted. But I know one thing for sure: I'm not going to be the fool anymore. I've learned that trust is fragile and some people will take advantage of it without a second thought. I just wish I'd realized it sooner. Go back to the way they were. Honestly, I never thought I'd be the guy to file for divorce or to even consider walking away from everything I'd built. But betrayal changed that. I started thinking about the future, about what it meant to rebuild after she'd so blatantly lied and stole from us. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, not when I'd been played like a fool and left with nothing but a deep sense of betrayal. The next few days were a whirlwind. I stayed up late researching legal options, trying to understand what I could do to recover some of that money. I spoke to a lawyer, and what he told me was a mixed bag. Legally, I might have a shot at getting some of the inheritance back if I could prove she transferred it without my knowledge or consent. But that wasn't easy. The transfers had been done through multiple accounts and was good at covering her tracks. Still, I had enough evidence that I felt confident I could at least threaten legal action and maybe force her to come clean. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but notice her behavior. She was trying to act normal like nothing had happened, but there were subtle signs she was panicking. She'd be overly sweet, trying to manipulate me into trusting her again, or she'd be cold and dismissive, avoiding any real talk about the money or Jake. I caught her deleting messages on her phone more than once, and I started keeping a close eye on her. I didn't trust her for a second. Every word, every gesture seemed calculated, like she was trying to spin a web to cover her tracks. I also decided I needed to talk to Jake directly. I couldn't just sit back and let her lie her way out of it. I didn't want to escalate things with violence or threats, but I wanted to hear what he knew, what he thought about all this. So I reached out to him via a burner number, pretending to be someone else. I kept it casual, but I made it clear I knew about their affair and that I was not happy. His response was revealing. He admitted they'd been seeing each other for months, that had been lying to me from the start. He said she'd promised him she was leaving me, that she wanted a fresh start. Hearing that, I felt even more betrayed, like I'd been played for a fool on every level. The thing that hurt the most was realizing that she'd been lying to my face the entire time. She convinced me she loved me, that she was committed even as she was sneaking around with Jake. And she'd used the inheritance, our hard-earned family money, to fund her affair. The betrayal cut so deep I felt physically sick. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could the woman I married, the woman I thought I knew, turn out to be this manipulative, selfish person? I started to distance myself emotionally. I couldn't keep pretending I was okay with her anymore. Every time I saw her smile or heard her say she loved me, I felt a pang of disgust. I knew I'd have to make a decision soon, whether to fight for our marriage, to try and salvage what was left, or to cut her out completely. I was leaning toward the latter, especially after discovering how she'd lied about everything, about her feelings, about her plans, about the money. She'd betrayed my trust so thoroughly that I couldn't see a way back. At the same time, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized that I'd been giving her too much benefit of the doubt for too long. I kept telling myself she was stressed or that she was under pressure, but the truth was she was just a liar and a thief. The more I uncovered, the more I saw that her entire persona was built on deception. I had to protect myself, my kids, and whatever little dignity I had left. That meant possibly ending the marriage and taking legal action to recover what I could. That decision wasn't easy. I loved her, or at least I thought I did, but love isn't supposed to feel like this, like betrayal, like being used and lied to on a scale I'd never imagined. I had to accept that my trust was broken beyond repair. The worst part, knowing she was still lying, still pretending everything was fine while she was planning her next move with Jake. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. So I began preparing myself for what was to come. I started documenting everything, screenshots, bank statements, her messages, just in case I needed to prove her deception later. I also started thinking about how to approach the divorce, how to protect my children, and how to get some of that money back. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't keep living in this nightmare. I had to take control of the situation, even if it meant breaking apart my family. Honestly, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and exhaustion. Part of me still hoped she'd come clean, admit everything, and maybe even try to make amends. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't happen. Trust was gone, and I was left with nothing but the ruins of what I thought was a life built on love and honesty. The betrayal was so profound I wondered if I'd ever feel whole again. But I also knew I had to move forward, one way or another. After that night of the confrontation, I knew things couldn't just after I spent those days gathering evidence and trying to piece everything together. I realized I was running out of patience, was still acting like everything was normal, but I saw through her every move. She'd put on a fake smile when I asked how her day was, but her eyes darted around nervously. I knew she was panicked, trying to cover her tracks, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it anymore. I had to act decisively. One evening, I decided I was going to confront her again, but this time with a plan. I told her I needed to talk serious stuff. She looked surprised, maybe even a little annoyed, like I was interrupting her. That's when I laid everything out, showed her the bank statements, the transfer confirmations, the texts I'd intercepted. I told her I knew about Jake, about the money, about her lies. Her reaction was a mixture of shock and anger. She kept insisting she'd done nothing wrong, that I was just paranoid, that I was overreacting because I didn't trust her. Trust me, I snapped. You transferred over $250, $0 of our inheritance to your ex-boyfriend. You lied to me about everything. How can you sit there and tell me I'm the one who's wrong? Her face twisted into a look of pure contempt. She spat out, "You're just jealous. You're insecure. That's why you're making all this up. I was trying to do what's best for us and you're just too stupid to see it." That was her go-to: blame me, accuse me of being insecure, as if she wasn't the one who'd been sneaking around and stealing from us. I was furious. I told her I was done playing her game, that I was filing for divorce, and that I'd take her to court if I had to. Her eyes widened and she started crying, but it wasn't genuine. It was just manipulation. She kept insisting she loved me, that I was making a huge mistake, that she'd never do anything to hurt us. But I knew better. I'd seen her true face now, and I wasn't going to be fooled again. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head: the lies, the betrayal, the money she'd stolen. I felt like my world was collapsing. I thought about the kids, how this would affect them, and I wondered how I'd ever rebuild my trust in anyone again. But I also felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time, I saw clearly what she was: an opportunist, a liar, a user. And I knew I had to protect myself and my children from her toxicity. The next day, I contacted a lawyer and started the divorce process. I also filed a report with the bank, alerting them about the suspicious transfers. I wanted to make sure I could recover as much of the money as possible, or at least hold her accountable. I didn't want her to get away with this. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, kept trying to manipulate me, calling and texting, crying, begging me to work this out. She told me she was suffering, that she'd lost everything because of me. I didn't buy it. I knew her game now. She was trying to guilt-trip me into staying, but I refused. I told her I needed space, that I was done with her lies, and that I'd be moving forward without her. I was tired of being played for a fool. The hardest part was realizing I'd been so blind. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs: her secretive phone habits, her late nights, her evasiveness. I kept telling myself I should have seen it coming, but I'd been so caught up in our life, in our family, that I ignored the warning signs. Now I was paying the price. But I also knew I couldn't let her destroy me completely. I had to stand up for myself and my kids. As I prepared for the next steps, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I was angry at her for everything she'd done, but I was also sad because I'd loved her once. That love was now tainted by betrayal, and I knew I'd have to work hard to heal from this. I told myself I'd be okay, one way or another. I'd rebuild, even if it took years. I had to, for my own sanity, for my children's future. I started thinking about what I'd say to the kids when the time came. I wanted to be honest, but also protect them from the worst of it. I didn't want to their mother, but I also didn't want to lie about what had happened. It was a delicate balance, but I knew I had to be strong for them. They deserved to know that their dad was still there, still fighting for them, even if everything around us was falling apart. The days that followed felt like a blur of legal meetings, conversations with the bank, and endless nights of trying to process everything. I had never imagined that my life would turn upside down so suddenly. The betrayal, the lies, the theft, everything came crashing down at once. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to salvage anything from this mess, especially that inheritance she had stolen. I was determined not to let her walk away with everything, and I was already planning my next move. One afternoon, I sat across from my lawyer, going over all the evidence I'd collected. The bank had confirmed the transfers, and I had screenshots of her texts with Jake, along with her evasive responses when I asked about her whereabouts. It was clear she'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. Based on what I knew, I had a solid case for recovering some of the money, and I was also considering a divorce on the grounds of infidelity and financial betrayal. That night, I confronted again. I told her I was serious about going through with the divorce, about taking her to court, and about exposing everything. Her reaction was classic. She broke down, crying, claiming she made a mistake, that she loved me and that she'd do anything to fix things, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw her for what she was, a manipulative liar who'd used me and our family for her own benefit. She kept insisting that I was the one ruining everything, that I was paranoid, insecure, and that I was trying to control her. I told her, "You lied to me about Jake, about the money, about everything. I trusted you. I gave you control over our inheritance because I believed in us. And you used that trust to run off with your ex and steal from us. How can I even look at you after all this?" She looked stunned for a moment, then started screaming that I was overreacting, that she was the victim here, and that I was just jealous of Jake. That's when I finally reached my breaking point. I told her I wanted her out of the house, that I was filing for divorce, and that I was going to do everything in my power to get my money back. I saw her face twist with anger and resentment, but I didn't care. I'd reached the point where I knew I had to protect myself, my kids, and whatever little dignity I had left. I refused to be played anymore. In the days that followed, I kept my focus on the legal side. I worked with my lawyer to prepare the paperwork for divorce, while also coordinating with the bank to freeze her accounts and trace the stolen inheritance. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to fight for what was rightfully ours. Every time I saw her trying to manipulate or guilt me, I reminded myself of the truth, that she'd betrayed me, lied to my face, and stolen from us. Meanwhile, behavior grew more erratic. She was trying to act innocent, but I saw through her. She'd call and text, begging me to work it out, to give her a chance, but I knew better. I'd already made up my mind. The woman I'd loved was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. The betrayal had cut so deep that I couldn't even look at her the same way anymore. One day, I decided to take a different approach. I hired a private investigator to see if I could find out more about her activities, her contacts, and her whereabouts. I needed concrete proof of her deception, and I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. The investigator found her meeting Jake a few times, always at night, always in secret. I saw the photos, and it just confirmed everything I'd suspected, that she'd been lying, cheating, and stealing right under my nose. As I sat alone in my house, I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and determination. I knew I had to be strong for my kids, to keep them safe from her manipulations, and to rebuild my life. I promised myself I wouldn't let this destroy me. I'd do whatever it took to recover what I could, to get out of this nightmare and to finally find some peace. Because at the end of the day, I realized that some people are just not worth the pain. They're toxic and dishonest, and I'd been naive enough to believe in her. Now, I'm preparing for the legal battles ahead, trying to stay focused on what's most important, my kids, my sanity, and reclaiming what's mine. I don't know exactly how this will end, but I do know that I refuse to be another victim of her lies. I'll fight for my future, even if it means starting over completely. Because I've learned the hard way that trusting blindly can cost everything, especially when someone you love turns out to be someone you never knew. Looking back now, I honestly don't know how I managed to keep it together through all of this. The betrayal cut so deep that I thought I'd never be able to trust anyone again, let alone rebuild my life from scratch. But somehow I did. I focused on my kids, on protecting them from the chaos, and on making sure I didn't fall completely apart. Every day was a battle between the anger I felt toward and the hope that I could come out of this stronger. The legal process was a nightmare. There were days when I felt overwhelmed, exhausted from the constant back and forth, and unsure if I'd ever see justice. But I kept pushing forward. The evidence I'd gathered, screenshots, bank statements, the investigators' reports, proved invaluable. It took months, but eventually I was able to recover a significant portion of the stolen inheritance. Not all of it, but enough to feel some sense of victory. The court ordered her to pay back what she took, and she was hit with a restraining order that kept her away from the house and the kids. The divorce was finalized shortly after that. It was a messy, emotional process, but I felt relief once it was over. She no longer had any power over me or my family. I made sure to get full custody of the kids, knowing they needed stability and someone who would protect them from her manipulations. During the court hearings, her lies and manipulative tactics were exposed, and I watched as the truth finally came out. It was hard to see her lose control, but I knew it was necessary. The truth had to be out. Now I'm slowly rebuilding my life. I've moved into a smaller place, closer to work and the kids' school. I've started therapy to deal with the emotional scars, trust issues, anger, and the heartbreak of betrayal. It's been a long road, but I'm learning to trust again, even if it's cautiously. My kids are doing okay. They're resilient, and I remind myself every day that they need me to be strong for them. Looking back, I realize I learned some hard lessons. Trust is fragile, and some people will take advantage of that. Never ignore the warning signs, no matter how much you want to believe in the best in someone. Always protect yourself and your family, especially when it comes to money, because greed and lies often go hand in hand. Most importantly, I've learned that even in the darkest moments, there's a chance for redemption and growth. I might have lost a lot, but I gained clarity and a new sense of strength I never knew I had. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, trust your gut. Don't be afraid to ask questions, too. Dig deeper. If something feels off, it probably is. Protect your heart, but also protect your assets. And most of all, don't let betrayal define you. You're stronger than you think, even when it feels like the world is crashing down around you. Because one day, the pain will fade and you'll find a way to move forward. I'm living proof of that.